Imagine sitting alone in your dimly lit apartment, surrounded by ancient books and eerie silence. The sun has long since disappeared, leaving behind shadows that stretch and crawl. Suddenly, you hear it, a faint whisper outside your door. Is it just your mind playing tricks on you? Or is something darker at play? In this video, we're diving deep into a chilling story that begins with a simple folklore study, but spirals into a terrifying confrontation with the unknown. What would you do if the whispers became real? And more importantly, how do you protect yourself when you're not sure what you're up against? Stay with me as we unravel the mystery. I sat cross-legged on my worn-out rug, surrounded by stacks of books piled high like miniature skyscrapers. My apartment, a tiny studio in the bustling heart of New York City, felt even smaller with the clutter of textbooks and notes strewn about. I flipped through the pages of my anthropology book, studying folklore as part of my coursework. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced across the walls, and I was fully immersed in tales of spirits and rituals from around the world. Suddenly, a peculiar whispering sound echoed through the hallway outside my apartment. I paused, my heart racing for a brief moment, but quickly dismissed it as my imagination running wild. After all, urban noises were a part of life in the city. I shook my head, trying to refocus on a particularly fascinating chapter about protective rituals. Yet, as I read on, an unsettling chill crept up my spine, making my skin prickle. I glanced around my dimly lit apartment, feeling an inexplicable sense of unease settle in the pit of my stomach. "Get a grip, Rachel," I muttered to myself, trying to shake off the feeling. I forced my eyes back to the page, but the words began to blur as my thoughts drifted. What if the stories were true? What if there were forces out there that I couldn't comprehend? I shivered, not just from the cold draft that slipped through the window, but from a sudden awareness that I was utterly alone. The next day, I met my friend Mark for coffee at our favorite cafe on campus. As I stirred my drink, the warm aroma of espresso filled the air, momentarily calming my nerves. But I couldn't shake the events of the previous night. "Hey Mark," I began hesitantly. "I've been hearing some strange noises in my apartment." He chuckled, the sound light and carefree. "What, like ghostly whispers? You've been reading too many of those folklore books, Rachel. Maybe you should take a break from the spooky stuff." I rolled my eyes, but a part of me felt compelled to share more. "No, seriously. I heard something last night. It sounded like someone was whispering right outside my door." Mark raised an eyebrow, his teasing demeanor softening. "Okay, but what did it say? Maybe it was just your neighbor being weird." "I don't know, it was just... I felt this chill, and it was like something was off," I admitted, my voice faltering. "I've been thinking about researching protective rituals, just in case." Mark took a sip of his coffee, eyeing me over the rim of his cup. "Protective rituals? You're not actually considering that, are you? You're not that superstitious, are you?" I shrugged, feeling a mix of embarrassment and determination. "I don't know, maybe I should. I mean, it can't hurt to be cautious, right?" "Sure," he replied, a smirk playing on his lips. "Just don't start burning sage or anything. I don't want to get kicked out of the cafe for setting off fire alarms." Despite his laughter, I sensed a flicker of concern in his eyes. "I'm serious, Mark. I just want to feel safe in my own home. With everything going on in the world, it might not be the worst idea." As the conversation drifted to lighter topics, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something lurking just beyond my awareness. That night, I found myself back in my apartment, heart racing as I prepared to conduct a simple protective ritual. I gathered sage and salt, items I had read about in my folklore studies. The air felt charged with energy as I lit the sage, watching the smoke curl upwards, filling the room with a fragrant scent that was both calming and invigorating. "Okay, this is just a precaution," I reassured myself, though my hands trembled slightly. I drew a circle of salt on the floor, feeling a sense of ritualistic empowerment. As I finished, the atmosphere thickened, and a sudden chill swept through the room. My breath hitched in my throat as I caught a glimpse of a dark shadow darting across the wall, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Panic surged through me. "What was that?" I whispered, heart pounding in my chest. The weight of the moment pressed down on me, and I felt the walls closing in, the darkness creeping closer. and I realized that I had unwittingly crossed a threshold into something I could not control. The days that followed my ill-fated ritual were a blur of chaos and dread. It began with small things: books inexplicably falling from their shelves, a glass that shattered without a soul nearby. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself that my mind was playing tricks on me, that the stress of schoolwork was simply getting to me. But then came the whispers. "Rachel." The sound echoed through my apartment, cold and haunting. I froze, heart pounding, as I glanced around the dimly lit room. Was it the wind? Perhaps an overactive imagination fueled by too many late-night study sessions? I wanted to dismiss it, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I began to isolate myself, avoiding friends and missing classes. Mark, my ever-optimistic friend, called me more than once. "Hey Rach, you coming to the study group? Everyone's worried about you," he said one afternoon, his voice tinged with concern. "I'm fine, Mark. Just busy," I replied, my voice lacking conviction. "Busy or hiding?" he probed. I sighed, feeling the weight of the truth pressing down on me. "I just need some time to think. I'll catch up later." I hung up the phone. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat in my small living room, surrounded by the shadows that seemed to loom closer with each passing day. My phone buzzed again, but I ignored it. What could I say? How could I explain what I was experiencing? Desperate for answers, I turned to the internet, seeking solace in the anonymity of an online forum dedicated to paranormal experiences. It felt strange, but the thought of sharing my fears with strangers was oddly comforting. I typed out my story, detailing everything: the whispers, the moving objects, the suffocating dread. Within minutes, responses flooded in. "Sounds like you've crossed paths with the Wraith," one commenter said. "It's known to haunt those who summon it unknowingly, often tied to tragic events in history." I scrolled through the comments, my heart racing as I read about the Wraith, its origins rooted in a tragic fire decades ago, an event that had claimed many lives. I felt a chill run down my spine. Was this entity somehow connected to my family? The thought sent a shiver through me. "Beware," another commenter warned. "The Wraith feeds on fear and regret. You must confront it to break free." I felt a surge of determination mixed with terror. I had to confront my fears, to understand what I had unleashed. My mind raced with thoughts of the abandoned building where the fire had occurred, a place I had heard whispered about in hushed tones, filled with shadows and sorrow. The next day, I stood outside the crumbling structure, its broken windows resembling hollow eyes staring back at me. My heart thudded in my chest, each beat echoing the words of the forum in my mind. "You must confront it." As I pushed open the rusted door, a gust of stale air hit me, sending a shiver down my spine. The interior was dimly lit, dust swirling in the sparse beams of light that filtered through the cracks. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky, reverberating off the walls. There was no response, only the eerie silence that engulfed me. The air felt thick, almost alive, pressing down on me as I stepped further inside. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me, echoing like a gunshot in the stillness. Panic surged through me as I turned to face it, the weight of dread settling in my stomach. "This is just a building," I whispered to myself, clenching my fists. "You can do this." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to move deeper into the darkness. With each step, the whispers grew louder, pulling at the edges of my sanity. I could feel the presence around me, a suffocating energy that made my skin crawl. As I ventured further, I noticed the walls were marked with cryptic symbols, the same ones I had stumbled upon in my research. My heart raced as I traced them with my fingers, feeling a strange connection to the past. It was as if the building itself was alive, holding its breath, waiting for me to unravel its secrets. "Why are you here?" a voice echoed, low and chilling. I whipped around, but there was no one there. The shadows danced menacingly, teasing my mind, and I felt myself teetering on the edge of terror. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted, though my voice trembled. But deep down I was terrified. I had come seeking answers, yet all I found was darkness. And as the shadows crept closer, I realized that to confront the Wraith, I would have to confront the shadows within myself as well. The darkness inside the abandoned building wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket, and every whisper echoed in my ears, pulling me deeper into the shadows. I pressed my back against the cold, damp wall, my heart racing, each thud resonating in the silence that followed the slamming door. I could barely see my hands in front of my face, but I could feel the unsettling presence that lurked just beyond my vision. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Is anyone there?" The only response was a cacophony of whispers, growing louder, weaving together into a sinister chorus that sent chills down my spine. I squinted into the darkness, trying to make sense of my surroundings. My breath quickened as I stumbled forward, my foot catching on something uneven on the floor. As I steadied myself, my eyes caught sight of cryptic symbols scrawled on the walls. They looked familiar, a reflection of the images I had seen during my frantic research. "No, this can't be real," I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. I approached the wall, tracing the symbols with trembling fingers. They felt warm to the touch, as if they were alive, pulsing with energy. "What are you trying to tell me?" I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the building, and I jumped back, my heart racing as panic clawed at my throat. Just as I was about to turn and flee, something caught my eye. In a corner, half hidden by debris, lay an old journal, its pages yellowed with age. My curiosity piqued. I rushed over, my fingers trembling as I opened it. The handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear. The Wraith must be bound. A ritual must be performed. As I read further, my breath caught in my throat. The journal detailed a failed ritual meant to bind the Wraith, a dark spirit that fed on fear and despair. My hands shook as I turned the pages, and I felt a strange connection to the writer. "What did you do?" I whispered, my voice barely breaking the silence. The final pages revealed a horrifying truth. The writer was a distant relative, someone from my family tree. "This can't be happening," I breathed, the weight of realization crashing down on me like a tidal wave. My great-grandmother had performed a similar ritual, one that had led to the Wraith's freedom. "I'm responsible for this. I've unleashed it," I gasped, the gravity of my family's history settling heavily on my shoulders. "Why didn't I see this before?" I muttered to myself, trying to piece together the fragments of my lineage. The shadows around me seemed to pulse with a life of their own, drawing closer, whispering my name. "Rachel, Rachel, Rachel." My mind raced. The journal was a warning, a plea for help. Yet here I was, trapped in the very place that had become a tomb for my ancestors' secrets. I could hear the whispers rising, building into a frenzied crescendo. The air thickened, heavy with dread, and I stumbled backward, my heart pounding. "I need to get out of here," I shouted, panic overtaking me. The whispers turned into a cacophony, an angry storm of voices that engulfed me, and I felt the shadows closing in, swallowing everything in their path. "Please, let me go," I begged, my voice breaking as I turned to flee. The door I had entered through felt impossibly far away, and the darkness seemed to conspire against me, pulling me back into its depths. I sprinted toward the exit, my breath coming in ragged gasps, but the shadows lunged at me, wrapping around my legs, pulling me down. "No!" I cried out, adrenaline surging through my veins. I fought against the darkness, my heart racing as I clawed my way toward the door. The whispers morphed into screams, a chorus of despair that echoed in my mind. I couldn't let this entity claim me. I had to escape. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I broke free from the shadow's grasp, barreling toward the door. I could feel the cold breath of the Wraith on my neck, urging me to succumb to the fear that gripped my heart. "I won't let you take me," I shouted defiantly, bursting through the door and into the night air, gasping for breath as I stumbled onto the street. The weight of the building's darkness fell away, replaced by the cool breeze of the city. But I knew this wasn't over. The truth was far more sinister than I had imagined, and I had to confront the horrors of my past if I wanted to break free from the Wraith's grasp. I sat on the edge of my bed, feeling the oppressive weight of the entity pressing down on me. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. I glanced around my dimly lit apartment, the shadows dancing eerily in the corners. My heart raced as I heard a soft knock on the door. It was Mark. "Hey, Rach," he called, his voice light and full of concern. "You okay in there?" I opened the door, forcing a smile despite the turmoil inside. "Yeah, just studying," I lied, stepping aside to let him in. The moment he crossed the threshold, I could see the worry etched on his face. "You don't look okay," "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, scanning the room as if expecting to find one. I chuckled nervously. "Funny you say that. I might as well have." Mark crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. "Seriously, Rachel, what's going on? You've been acting strange since that night you did that ritual. Have you thought about talking to someone? Maybe a paranormal expert?" I hesitated, the thought of Dr. Sinclair sending chills down my spine. "I don't know. What if it makes things worse? Or what if it helps? You can't keep living like this. You need to take control." He stepped closer, his expression softening. "I'm worried about you." His concern was genuine, and I knew he was right. I took a deep breath, the weight of my fears pressing heavily on my chest. "Okay, fine. Let's talk to Dr. Sinclair." Later that evening, I found myself sitting in Dr. Sinclair's office, the walls lined with books on the paranormal, artifacts, and strange symbols. The air felt charged, and I shivered as he entered, his presence commanding yet calming. "Rachel," he said, glancing at me with piercing blue eyes. "You've summoned something dark, haven't you?" I nodded, unable to form words. He motioned for me to sit, and I sank into the chair, feeling small and vulnerable. "You need to understand," he began, leaning forward. "Rituals involving dark entities can lead to catastrophic consequences. You have to be prepared for what's to come if you wish to cleanse your space." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "What do I need to do?" He hesitated, then replied, "A cleansing ritual requires courage and sacrifice. It's not just about banishing the entity, it's about facing your own fears and the pain that brought you to this point." "Facing my fears?" I echoed, my mind racing with the implications. "But what if I can't?" "You must. The entity feeds on your doubt and fear. You need to reclaim your power." He handed me a small pouch filled with herbs, along with a piece of chalk. "Tonight, prepare yourself, surround yourself with protective symbols, and when you're ready, we will begin." As I walked back to my apartment, I felt the weight of dread settle over me again. My hands trembled as I laid out the symbols, drawing intricate patterns on the floor with the chalk. I gathered the herbs, their scents, a mix of earthy and sharp, filling the air with a strange comfort. But as night fell, I felt the presence grow stronger. The shadows thickened, swirling around me like a dark fog. I could hear whispers, taunting and menacing. My heart raced, and I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the rising panic. "Come on, Rachel," I whispered to myself. "You can do this." I closed my eyes and focused on the protective symbols surrounding me, trying to draw strength from them. Suddenly, the air grew cold, and I felt a rush of wind sweep through the room. I opened my eyes to see the shadows coalescing into a form, dark and ominous. My breath hitched as I felt an overwhelming wave of fear wash over me. "Why did you summon me?" the voice echoed, a chilling whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "I didn't mean to," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to protect myself." The entity laughed, a sound that echoed through the depths of my mind. "Protection? You think you can protect yourself from me?" With my heart pounding, I remembered Dr. Sinclair's words. I had to face it. I took a deep breath and stood tall, trying to ignore the fear gnawing at my insides. "I will reclaim my life. I'm not afraid of you." The entity surged forward, darkness swirling around me, and I felt a moment of doubt creep in. But I fought back, channeling my fear into determination. I would not be a victim of this malevolent force. I had to push through the growing darkness, whatever it took. As I stood in the dim light of my apartment, my heart raced, and my palms grew clammy. The air felt thick, charged with an energy that made my skin prickle. I had finally decided to confront the malevolent force that had been haunting me since I inadvertently summoned it with that protective ritual. The sage and salt I had used were now mere memories. This entity was far beyond anything I could have anticipated. With trembling hands, I prepared for the cleansing ritual that Dr. Sinclair had suggested. I lit candles and arranged protective symbols around me, feeling both empowered and terrified. I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths, trying to center myself. But as I began to chant the incantations, the shadows in the corners of my room seemed to grow darker, swirling like a storm that threatened to engulf me. Suddenly, vivid images flooded my mind. I was no longer in my apartment. I was transported to another time, to a house that felt familiar yet distant. I saw my great-grandmother, a woman with striking features, her eyes filled with sorrow. She stood in front of a mirror, clutching a locket, tears streaming down her face. I could feel her pain, her regrets clawing at my heart. The Wraith had fed on her despair, and in that moment, I understood. It thrived on fear and loss. "Why didn't you stop it?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the whispers that echoed around me. The vision shifted. I saw her perform a ritual, desperate to bind something she did not fully understand. I realized she had opened a door to a darkness that now sought to consume me. Just as I felt the weight of her sorrow pressing down on me, a cold breeze swept through the room, snapping me back to reality. The Wraith had manifested, its form twisting and writhing, a grotesque reflection of my deepest fears. Its eyes, hollow and menacing, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach churn. "Rachel," it hissed, its voice a chilling whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "You think you can escape your lineage? You are bound to me, to your family's pain." "No," I shouted, defiance bubbling up inside me. "I won't let you take me." The Wraith's laughter echoed, a sound that clawed at my sanity. I could see flashes of my failures. Every moment I had let fear dictate my life, every chance I had missed. It was as if the creature was peeling away the layers of my confidence, exposing my vulnerabilities. "Remember the darkness," it taunted, the shadows curling around its form like smoke. "You are just like her, weak, afraid. You cannot break this cycle." But in that moment of despair, something ignited within me, a flicker of clarity. I remembered the locket. It had been a symbol of love and protection, a gift from my great-grandmother that I had tucked away in a drawer, forgotten in the chaos of my life. I could feel it calling to me, urging me to return to it, to embrace that connection to my past. "I am not weak," I screamed, the power of my voice surprising even me. I turned and raced towards my bedroom, the shadows swirling around me, trying to hold me back, but I was determined. I would not let the Wraith consume me, or continue the cycle of fear and regret that had plagued my family for generations. My heart pounded as I flung open the drawer, rummaging through the clutter until my fingers brushed against the cool metal of the locket. I held it up to the light, its surface reflecting the glow of the candles. In that moment, I felt the love and strength of my great-grandmother enveloping me, a warm embrace that pushed back against the coldness surrounding me. With the locket clutched tightly in my hand, I took a deep breath and prepared to face the Wraith once more. It would not win. I would break this cycle, reclaim my lineage, and turn the tide against the darkness that had haunted us for too long. As I stepped back into the abandoned building, the air felt charged, as if the very walls were alive with a restless energy. The darkness enveloped me, thick and suffocating, but I clutched the locket tightly in my hand, its cool surface grounding me against the encroaching dread. Memories of my great-grandmother flooded my mind, her soft voice, her laughter echoing through my childhood home, and the way her eyes sparkled with wisdom. I had to channel that strength now. "Show yourself," I called into the gloom, my voice echoing off the cracked walls. The silence that followed felt like a challenge. I could feel the Wraith lurking, its presence palpable, like a storm waiting to break. My heart raced as I held the locket higher, the dim light catching on the intricate designs etched into its surface. Suddenly, a chilling scream pierced the air, reverberating through the building. "You dare to return?" The voice was a cacophony of anguish and anger, a sound that clawed at my insides. The shadows began to coalesce, twisting and writhing until the Wraith emerged, its form grotesque and otherworldly. It hovered before me, a swirling mass of darkness with hollow eyes that bore into my soul. "Why do you haunt me?" I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. "What do you want?" The entity twisted, its shape shifting constantly, revealing glimpses of sorrowful faces caught within its depths. "You are part of me, and I am part of you," it hissed, its voice echoing with the weight of centuries. "Your family's pain has given me life." "No," I cried, realizing the truth of its words. The Wraith was not just a random specter. It was a manifestation of my family's grief, their regrets and unhealed wounds. "I won't let you control me anymore. I will embrace our pain, not fear it." With that realization igniting a fire within me, I took a deep breath and began to speak aloud the truths I had buried. "We've lost so much. Our family has endured pain, but we've also loved and survived. I honor our past, but I will not let it define me." My voice grew stronger with each word, echoing through the darkened halls. The Wraith writhed, its screams growing louder, a chilling symphony of anguish. "You cannot escape me," it shrieked, but I stood firm, the locket glowing softly in my grasp. "Watch me," I shouted back, feeling the weight of generations behind me as I opened the locket. A warm light spilled forth, illuminating the shadows and casting the darkness away. As the light grew brighter, I felt a connection to my ancestors, a thread of love and resilience that flowed through me. "Together," I whispered, channeling their strength. "We can break this cycle." I focused on the pain, transforming it into a beacon of light that surged from the locket. The Wraith writhed and howled, the shadows around it disintegrating in the face of my newfound resolve. The air crackled with energy as the light expanded, enveloping the Wraith. Its form began to dissolve, the faces of the tormented spirits flickering in and out of existence. "No, you cannot do this," it screamed, but I felt no fear. Instead, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. "Yes, I can," I replied softly, allowing the light to envelop me as well. "And I will." With that, the Wraith's form shattered into 1,000 fragments, dissipating like mist in the morning sun. As the last echoes of its cries faded, a serene silence filled the space. I lowered the locket, its glow dimming but still warm in my palm. The oppressive weight that had clung to me for so long lifted, leaving me feeling lighter, unburdened. I had not only freed myself, but also my ancestors from the chains of sorrow that had bound them for generations. With the first rays of dawn breaking through the cracks in the building, I stepped outside, the light washing over me like a cleansing wave. I took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air fill my lungs, invigorating and pure. The world felt different. I felt different. The shadows that once haunted me were gone, replaced by a sense of hope and possibility. I looked up at the sky, a vast expanse of blue, and smiled. No longer would I live in fear of the past. I was ready to embrace my future, armed with the knowledge of my lineage and the strength of my ancestors behind me. The Wraith had been vanquished, and with it, my fears had faded into the light of a new beginning.